Parents have to interview camps. You have to, the same way you choose a yeshiva, you call a camp and you ask all the hard questions. You just presented a beautiful display of concerns. Interview a camp. What do you do? If I have an allergy, how do you handle a medical emergency? How do you handle these things that you're being meramis to? If a camp doesn't have a real infrastructure of a system, that's a red flag.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our next edition, our next exciting edition of Agudah Live. My name is Avi Shai and I have the privilege of serving as the New Jersey Director for the Agudath of America, joined once again by my co-host Rabbi Shai Markowitz of the Lefkowitz Leadership Initiative. This is going to be a very exciting episode.
Very timely, very informative, and something I think that's on the mind of parents across the world.
Camp season is coming soon, and many parents have questions about camp. People in general have questions about camp. We have the opportunity to be talking to a legend, a real legend in the world of camping, also a legend in the world of chinuch, Rabbi Armo Kuessous, who is the Menahel of, I'm going to butcher the name of the pronunciation, of Yeshivat Shaare Torah. And I tried my best.
Okay, good.
As well as the English principal of Yeshiva Torah Temima.
That you got
That
right.
was much easier. Who has decades in the chinuch world and the camping world. I remember as a kid when we used to do intercamp games against Camp Romimu, and he's going to discuss some of these questions parents have, questions mechanchim have, questions bachrim have about camp, questions that girls have about camp. And we're going to take a deep dive into the camping scene as we prepare for camp season.
I think that what we see from a conversation like this with Rabbi Kuessous is how deep dive it really can get. And really, I think that a session on camp, we could have done multiple episodes on camp. There's so much to talk about.
We could have gone at least 2-3 hours longer.
Right. There's so much to be spoken about, and it's really a shame that we don't speak about it more often. And hopefully, as we move this,
well, maybe we should.
Agudah Live, we should continue
do
it more and get into them, because there's so much. Whether it's the chinuch, whether it's the safety in the camps, whether it's the competition in the camps. There's so much that we should delve into in depth.
What parents can do to ensure that their children are having a good summer in camp. Prepare. Now, this is not only during camp. This is before camp starts, and that's one of the topics we delved into, was what should parents be doing before camp starts. Not once camp starts. We can maybe do another episode of when camp starts, what parents should be doing if there are issues. But this is the pre-camp edition
very good.
of Agudah Live podcast, episode 1. That's
right.
Great. We got it all.
Okay. And that's good. It gives us the opportunity to do more of these. And something that will be important, because at the end of the day, camp is either a tenth or it could be 2 months out of your children's lives on an annual basis.
Sure.
And it's important that we put the effort into, as parents, the preparation that's needed to make sure the kids, each of our children, are getting the most out of it, and what it brings to them, the opportunity it brings to them in their learning, in their skills, in their talents, just in everything. But it's got to be like everything else. It's got to be preparation. As a parent, it has to be prepared.
So we're looking forward. Stay tuned and listen into a very, very informative and exciting and enlightening episode. Thank you.
Before we end it and we continue, and I wanted to remind everyone.
I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
We want everyone to share with us your thoughts,
please.
Your ideas that are on your mind that you feel should be discussed. If you have questions, again, email us at info@agudahlive.com. info@agudahlive.com, or visit the website agudahlive.com, where these episodes will be posted, and there'll be opportunity to watch them, to listen to them, and also to share with us your thoughts and comments. Here we go.
So Shai, camp season is right around the corner. Camp's about to start every year. I love the camp season. I'm a big camp guy, as you know.
Yes, I remember from the years you went to camp. I'm not talking about it as a staff member. I'm talking about when you were working at Agudah, you were still going to camp.
That's right.
I remember when I was dating, I told my wife I was a big camp guy. At that point, I had just finished camp. I'd been part of Camp Simcha for 3 years in a row, and I said, we're going to have to go back. And
you didn't go back.
We didn't go back. No,
so I was the exact opposite. My wife did not want to go back to camp, and we went back to camp. But that's for a different episode.
Okay.
If married people should go back to camp or not. Maybe we'll try to squeeze that in today or not. But that's a whole different discussion.
But you guys took over camp. Your wife also did a lot of stuff in camp in Ura, in the zone.
We still are affiliated with the zone. Baruch Hashem, I was there for Shus. We go Rosh Hashanah, but that's also a different Different show completely. That's like the Urathon. That's a different show completely. But today we are joined, Baruch Hashem, I was to get ready, as many parents, and many boys, and many Bachrim, and many girls, Beisakov girls, tens of thousands of them, get ready to start the camp season. We are joined by Rabbi Armo Kuessous, who's a legend in the camping world, also a tremendous mechanech, the Menahel of Yeshivat, Shaare Torah, which I for sure pronounced incorrectly. I'm sorry, Rabbi Kuessous. I tried. And the English principal of Yeshivat Tartamima, which I know I pronounced that correctly because I went there for like 12 years. So we knew how to pronounce Yeshivat Tartamima. And Rabbi Kuessous, I want to tell you something. I remember as a boy in Camp Monk, when the Camp Monk hockey team would play against Camp Romimu. And as everyone knows, Camp Monk had the best, undisputed hockey team in the mountains. I'm not sure whether they're holding today or not. I have no idea what their record is like. But in my days, there were like 8 or 9 years that they never lost the game. And then this new camp came around. It's no longer around anymore, this camp. It was like a 2-3, you remember what I'm talking about, this camp? Like 2-3 years that came around.
Maybe Camp Yesharim?
Maybe Yesharim, I'm not sure. But there was a camp.
Yes, sir.
Came
Camp
around.
Kessler.
No, it wasn't Camp Kessler.
I was in Kessler.
We beat Kessler every year. We destroyed Kessler.
Camp Kessler was
like a joke.
You're making fun of me.
No, not the camp. Camp Monk was the best camp. Kessler, we were amazing. But this new camp came. I mean, it was a staff member, Camp Monk's father, who started the camp. Lived in Queens. I forgot the name of the camp. And he came to Camp Monk.
Camp Yesharim.
Maybe it was
You want to hear something crazy? I had the boy over at my house for Shabbos this year.
Really?
Just the Shabbos, this past Shabbos.
Really?
I had the family over, the Khan family.
Khan?
Yes.
That's Yesharim. That's Camp Yesharim.
And they came to Camp Monk and they broke our record. And the camp was like, it was worse than Tisha B'Av. It was Avelus Mamish. Like here we beat Romu every year. We beat this camp every year. We beat Kessler
Excuse me? I don't...
Every year. Every camp we beat every year. And this new camp comes to Monk, and it was a home game. It was on our turf. And they won us. But I remember the Romimu Monk game was always very competitive. And Rabbi Armo Kuessous was the goalie. And we couldn't get over. Like, people say, oh, that's the head counselor of the camp. Now in Camp Monk, our head counselor was Rabbi Frankel, Rabbi Yudi Frankel. And we would try like imagine Rabbi Frankel being the goalie. It just didn't go. It just didn't go. So like, what? That's the head counselor? And you were a phenomenal goalie, by the way. I'm sure you still are. But not sure if you still play or not. But Mamash a legend in the camping world.
Speaking of camp, I do want to also say that we're in Art School Studios, and this is videotaped by Hanani Kramer. Hanani Kramer was a major player in Camp Romu.
Really?
Every morning he would wake us up, and I don't remember the character's name. And maybe Armo could tell us what the name was.
Hanania was an incredible division head, and Mixer Shvacha, he was quite a talent. Shluffy Pokervecker. Who doesn't know about Shluffy Pokervecker?
Shluffy Pokervecker.
Exactly. That's great.
Holy
Memories.
cow.
How many Mechanechem drove from Lakewood to their different yeshivas early in the morning listening to Shluffy Pokervecker?
Shluffy Pokervecker.
And I'm going to get you the recordings of the things. I know Hanan showed me. He has it online. The recordings, they were really great. But anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes over here.
But we are starting camp, and I want to ask you, Rabbi Kuessous, I'm going to ask you a few questions. We'll schmooze about camp, and maybe you have things you want to say to us about camp, and we can discuss it. Camping is a whole world of camping, and many parents that, for sure in Lakewood, the ages have gone up when they send their kids to camp. I went to camp when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
I was coming out of 3rd grade.
Your parents wanted to get you out.
Right again, they're out of the house. And I went, and now that I go, I remember in my bunk, we had guys that were younger than me. Momo Bauman today, who does the podcast.
Yeah.
He was in my bunk, him, a guy Shul Lebovitz, and the guy Ben Seen Rubin, 3 boys. They were from LA, from California. And they were 8-year-olds, they were 7-year-olds, they were younger than us, they were a year younger than us. But they came to our bunk, and then the next day they stayed back behind, they got left back, to catch up. And they lived in California. Today, I don't think many camps even have bunks for 3rd graders. Even 4th graders, there's maybe 1 bunk at best, bedeichik, and then 5th graders start, 6th graders the explosion. What happened with that? Why is it that all the ages change? Should kids be going to sleepaway camp? Obviously sleepaway camp is a good thing or not, but should we be bumping up the ages? Or are we sort of what has changed in the last 10, 15 years that the ages have slowly crept up, and we're not sending little kids to camp anymore.
At the end of the day, maturation is a very real thing. And just like in yeshiva, you see that children, as they go from pre-1A to first, second, third, fourth grade, today you have a whole bunch, an array of different, in the developmental years of a child, there's different things that need to mature properly. Behaviorally, emotionally, academically. So it really boils down to a parent asking themselves, is a child ready to go away for 4 to 8 weeks? So where it used to be more commonplace, perhaps, because maybe there weren't so many labels and things weren't so complex as it was, back in the old days, or whatever you want to call it. But today, I think people are more sensitive and in tune to make sure the child is ready to handle. It's a full load. It's a big day. It's a long day. It's a lot of activities, and a child has to be ready for it. As much as you could train counselors, and we're ready for kids, Lamaisa parent has to make sure. So I think people are just a little bit more careful to say, you know what, I'll wait just a little bit longer before I send them. You were mentioning, Avi's 6th grade explosion. By us, it's a 5th grade explosion. By the time you get to 5th grade, we have 10, 11 bunks in the 5th grade. It's quite large. And that's a huge jump from 4th grade, which is about 4 or 5 bunks. So, I think that's it in a nutshell.
I wonder, as you're a big mechanech, and you see the different pieces of children from their being in camp and then they're being in yeshiva and in high school age and younger age. I wonder, like you're saying that maturation is a real thing. It is a real thing. Are we sort of like giving in to not forcing maturation by saying, okay, my tzaddik, my shefela, you can be a little homesick. Okay, so you'll stay home. When I was a kid, everyone went to sleepaway camp. In 4th grade, almost everyone went. And we had kids that were homesick. There were kids that were always homesick. And they went to the nurse or the camp mother, and almost everyone, you got over it. Yeah, there's always that yachid, but Ruba the Ruba got over it, and they may have had those hard nights, and that's the role of good head staff and good camp mothers and good, whoever it may be, good counselors. And the kid matured. Now this kid now grew up into a person that was sort of forced into maturing. Are we taking that opportunity away by not pushing kids to go earlier? I always wonder this. This is one of my big camp questions. I have a lot of camp questions of today. Why we not, like I have children of my own. So my oldest son, I in 4th grade, because there was no 3rd grade bunk. In 4th grade, I registered him to camp. COVID came, so he couldn't go. So the next year he went, but then he wasn't younger anymore. And now my second kid is only in 3rd grade, so I don't have the option anymore. But I wonder next year, is it even of course we're going to send him. 4th grade, you go to camp. He may be a little homesick, so that's the whole point of it.
Tough it out.
You toughen him up a little bit.
Today you have options, Avi. You have day camps. You have bungalow colonies that have 300-400 kids in a day camp in a bungalow colony. So people are invested in their homes. It's a whole communities up there in bungalow colonies now. So you're competing, and the day camps are very competitive. They've made them very much overnighty with their programs. So Mamela, you have a parent of a 3rd, 4th grade kid that holds it back. You want to say, should you force it? You can't really force things anymore. You really got to feel it out and make sure it's the right thing for your child. In the overall scheme of camp, people who don't send to camp, it's a chaval. You and I know strongly that having that camp experience is such a stepping stone for life. Be it in yeshiva, later on chavrusas, being in a dorm, getting married later, parenthood, in the workforce, that experience of being in camp and what you gain from those interactions, you can't get it anywhere else. You just can't replace that. So that's a sad part today. You see that especially in the teenagehood, many people forgoing on working with kids, the road trips you have now, and all the masmidim camps, which, don't get me wrong, that's a beautiful thing, but not being able to work with kids and giving back, the system is losing out.
You should know, I actually wrote down some notes. I have a little pad with some notes. And one of the things I wanted to ask was about that last point about Mesivta camps, not to knock any Mesivta camps. Everyone's amazing, and everyone should do well, and they should have a lot of kids and all that kind of stuff. But what a chaval! It's such a shame. Are we, as adults, so to speak? I'm not such an adult, but the system, like at the end of the day, this bacher in 9th grade. When I was in 9th grade, I was a waiter. I knew that every year Sham Shapint was my head waiter, and I was in Camp Monk. We had a party, we had a blast, and we learned a lot. And Rabbi Olbaum Zozangazon was on top of us, and Rabbi Trank gave us a learning group, and we did fine. But we knew every morning at 6 something we had to get up to prepare the ketchup and the cereal and the syrups. It was an achrayus, and we had to serve it. It wasn't below us. We learned achrayus. We learned how to deal with, kvetchy kids. I want to get this, and I don't like that. You learned a certain maturity. And today, the Bachim that go to Mesivta camps, are they losing out on that opportunity? They're going to go through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. When did this boy ever learn responsibility? And then when he gets older, they go to Eretz they go to Eretz camp, they go here. They never sat in a bunk with 12 kids and had a job
and took responsibility.
And look, was real responsibility. Are we missing something? Is something? Did we miss the boat? Did we not get the memo that why this was wrong?
It's the morning after Adirei Torah, so we have a tremendous chashivas for Lima Torah. If these Masmidim camps are taka continuing fully what a Ben Torah is getting in Mesivta or Beis Medrash, then I hear, I don't want to chas v'shalom take away from teenagers who want to learn more and structure their days differently. But I don't know if that's fully what's going on in the Masmidim camps today. And again, not to pass judgment, chas v'shalom, but there is a balance. The idea that teenagers could work with children and give back to kids as a counselor is an immeasurable experience.
Talking about that, I've discussed and I've heard from guys our age saying that their feeling for askanos, for caring about others, happened through their working camp, happened through their
all the time.
Seirei of Agudah and things like that, where they learned to care for others. And it's a big loss that we're missing out probably on that feeling.
We're definitely. I'm not going to pontificate my grace Deus over here, but I'm not one that has Deus. But I'm asking Rabbi Kuessous, who's in the field. He's the principal of a high school. He sees Bachrim, and some of the camps are amazing. Some of them, it's a shame that boy didn't go to camp and learn in a Christ, and also learn himself. The boys themselves, they feel good and make a couple of bucks on the side, which is also always a good thing. But there's so many pieces. But Rabbi Kuessous, the question that comes to us, the problem is that the camps have to be able to accommodate that. That's part of the issue also. If camps go 2 months and they're not going to go within the schedule of the yeshivas, then also gets very complicated. So it's a bit of a catch-22. Like we may want to have bachrim that we want bachrim to go to camp, but malaso, what should we do? The yeshivas are only off for 1 month, and that month is based around our calendar.
But I think that's a new thing where yeshivas are only off for 1 month.
But that's been going on for many years.
Yeah.
For many years. The New York yeshivas, some of them, the Tarvadas, Tartima, maybe Neisol, there's a handful. Roiv of the Mesivtas are not off 2 months.
I think the Lakewood ones, the more
especially the out-of-town ones for sure not. The Philly, Long Beach, Peekskill, they are only off for 1 month or 4.5 weeks, not 2 months. So are the camps ready or willing to if the camps would accommodate?
So again, that's a question I would have. Why don't we change the camping? Is there a reason why we're not changing the camping schedule to only be 1 month?
Should camp be for 1 month to accommodate the staff?
What do you mean should camp be for 1 month? It's been working very nicely 8 weeks. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. By us, we have 47 bunks. Kenai Nahara, we're quite a large camp. You're talking about 650 overnight campers. There's 1,000 people in the camp.
Wow.
So now, predominantly what happens is in your first month, a lot of your counselors are 12th graders. Those 12th graders want to prepare for yeshiva. They're going to Eretz Yisrael, so they don't necessarily stay second half. Who comes in second half? All the Beis Medrash boys from Eretz Yisrael. So the system really has a wiggle room. It does work. It definitely works. You're going to have, in the first trip, you won't have as many Beis Medrash guys. You still have to have a criterion as to what kind of boys you're bringing in. And Baruch Hashem, we find that we are meeting that benchmark. But the system does work. To go ahead and say only have camp for 1 month, no, it does work.
No. And that school should go longer for 11 months, for sure not.
I'm not going to win a lot of fans.
For sure not, Rabbi Kuessous, right? That we shouldn't have yeshiva go for 11 months. No?
Listen,
I'm from Lakewood, by the way. It goes 11 months.
There's a lot of discussions going on today about maneuvering and trying to make sure that the yeshiva calendar, together with the camp calendar and the Yom Tov calendar, all kind of goes in sync. This way, to make sure that the younger kids get the proper chinuch, it starts the right time. Camps can have the proper supervision. I mean, more than ever before, we need the proper shmira in camp. There's so much going on today. There's an onslaught, which, as you would say, Avi, is a show in itself. But there's an onslaught today. But in order to have at least somewhat the counselors to be trained and to be able to work with kids, you need to have counselors there. So if the zmanim don't work out and everyone says, well, it's a camp, it's a business, who cares? Then who's watching the children? Whether it's a boy, the girls, younger or older, you need shmira. It's a huge discussion. Armo Kuessous doesn't think he's going to have all the answers on our little sit down right now.
But I did want to ask you, talking about this discussion, what is as a mechanech, both in an elementary school, a high school, and also in charge of the camp, what as a parent should my partnership be in terms of making the camp experience as positive as possible in his ruchnius? What do I have to prepare him for? What is the thoughts that as a parent I should be thinking about?
What I would say is, I can only tell you what we do in Camp Romimu. And I say it very proudly because it's real work, it's intricate work, and it's very important work. And that is the importance of the communication between the home and the camp. It's not about just sending in your tuition check and your camp fees and saying your canteen fees and say, okay, I'll see you visiting day, I'll see you at the end of the summer. A parent has to know their child. If the child is having has an emotional issue, be it impulsivities or homesick, however you want to define what it is. If there was a benel chavero issue, there's a lot of, today we use anxieties and stresses. Those labels are being used. They're not my labels, it's a fact. If children have things, the parents have to call the camp. In Rome, what we have is a sheet of confidentiality, and it is extremely confidential. On that paper, if chas v'shalom a home is not intact, there's a yosem, or there's a family situation, or as we just described, someone's having an issue, the head counselor, the division head, the counselor and JC have to know. And there has to be a communication. This idea of just sending your child off and hoping that it all works is irresponsible mitzad a parent. And it also works in the learning arena. If a child is a regular learner, Aleph base kid, then you're right, he goes to camp, let him enjoy. But if someone's having a Kriya issue, be it in the lower grades or Chumash, Mishnayos, Gemara, notify the camp. It does, obviously you can't accommodate during the learning group, but you can have someone work with that boy. You know what it is to be away from the classroom for 11 weeks? We're going to do it now. Here, yeshiva's over June 21. You won't be back into school, depending where you are. I'm starting September 4 in our community. It's a long time to be away from the classroom. So a parent knows there's a learning issue. Communication. Don't just let it go by the wayside.
It's an interesting point. When I was in a head counselor, a lot of parents, not a lot, but there was a concept of parents that felt, my kid's going to camp, now's the opportunity to wean him off whatever he was taking at home. It's the camp's problem, and he's in camp. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need this. He doesn't need that. And the kid would come to camp sometimes, and we notice after 3-4 days, maybe there's a problem here that we don't know about. And we would call the parents, and some parents were upfront with us, and we made them, overnight, whatever had to be overnighted or whatever it was. And some parents were not so upfront about things because they really hoped, and it never worked out. It never, ever, ever worked out. And it's never successful.
Spot on, Avi.
But
You're spot on. It's unbelievable. And you know what? We use the Lashon. Whatever intervention or accommodation a parent needs to do to even the playing field so the child could learn during the year, but it also means that where he can be socially accepted. You come to camp and you throw it off, and the boy 24/7 in the bunkhouse can't pull it together. It's a disaster. It could be a disaster. So, yes, again, communication. Everyone, a parent has to know their child. The camp has to have an infrastructure to receive those children. And I'm happy to hear that your experience was that you were on top of it, because we have an achrayus. As head staff and any mechanech running camps, we have an achrayus to be mamshech all the tremendous work that yeshivas are doing the whole year. Absolutely.
Armo, let me ask you a question. Some parents have mentioned, and they've brought up this idea that camps are very sports heavy, but also very competition heavy. It's very competitive. Even playing between sports, there's a lot of competition. As a mechanech, how does that play into the chinuch of our children? Focusing on winning, always winning, doing better than the next person. What are your thoughts on that?
So,
how do you advise a parent?
Right? Recently, I was discussing this. If you're going to go, I don't want to sound like someone that we all know, winning, a previous individual that we know, which, whatever, maybe in his field of what he does for a living, he has to do that. It's really from the leader, from the top down. If you profess and you promote winning and competitiveness and intensity, then that's what's going to filter down. Of course, you're setting up leagues. There's wins, there's losses. If you're going to go post it and announce it with a zest and a gusto, where you basically make the kid wear the W all day and he wears the L all day, okay, so you're promoting competitiveness. The leadership of the camp, top down, has to be very chachmadik in how you do this. You want to have competitive does not mean that it's aggressive. Competitive means it's fair teams. A child should feel I'm in a league. You win, you lose, you win, you lose, and it's a balanced league. So that's called competitive. That's a normal way of using competitive. But competitive with intensity and this aggression, and where you wear it in a way that it's not healthy, you can't do that. The camp has to present it in a very edel way where winning is nice, but it's not everything.
And what about if a kid is not a sports? What do you do in Camp Romimu, for example? What do you hear others do if the kid's not a sports?
Not a sports kid.
Not a sports kid, right?
I would wish you could. Shai, you should know it's your camp. Shai, we met in Camp Romimu. I remember you, Shai. As a matter of fact, right now, I see you in your bunkhouse. I see it straight down on the second from the gazebo. I see you in your bunkhouse.
Wow.
Down there, and that's going back 30, I'm going to say 29 years, 30 years, 28 years. But to your point, Mechila, what was the last thing you just said? I'm sorry.
About if you're not a sports.
Oh, yeah. No. So
was Shai a sports guy, by the way? I want to hear Rabbi Kuessous.
I was a staff member there.
Was Shai a sports guy or not a sports guy? He wasn't a sports guy.
Definitely had leadership qualities. And
leadership qualities, that's an excellent answer.
They have definitely sprouted. They've sprouted. So listen, it's all how you present sports. Oh, I was telling you, we have this woodwork shop. I can't even tell you. It's the most unbelievable. First of all, it's not just a gorgeous woodwork shop. So Rabbi Pfeiffer has employed a Rebbe who is Ayim V'Naira in the field. So you have kids who come there, the things that they make. Now, granted, they're part of a league team, and we still want to encourage them to get involved. But there's always that back door to come to the woodwork shop. You can't imagine what that does for a child that needs a little boost. The woodworking is incredible. We've had rocketry. We have a lot of different specialty. The biking. This year we're doing UTVing. It's a new item, which the kids are very excited about. We have an aqua park in the lake. It's mamish like it can't even be mastic what it looks like. The point is there's so many different things that if you're not sports per se excellence, that you can find other things to do.
That's, I think, part of the beauties of camp. That camp, it gives kids opportunities that even if you're not great at learning, you're not great at sports, if you're in a yeshiva setting, there's the sports by recess, there's learning in yeshiva. You're limited, one of the two boxes. Over here, you have the options. There's art, there's acting,
Right,
there's skits, there's just cheering, there's being in the dining room and just screaming your lungs out and just letting out your energy in a fun way.
You'll appreciate, we have one night, it's called Romimu's Got Talent, and it takes weeks to prepare. And we even start before camp. We'll reach out to ask the kids, bring anything, any special talents that you have. You can't imagine the stuff that we see on stage. Besides voices and instruments and acrobats and mimes and magic, or just, you can't imagine. And they audition. So, we make sure that the show that night is going to be Le'ela. But you can't imagine little kids walking into camp. You say, you could sing like that? We have a kid who plays a keyboard, just like you just sit there with your mouth opened. It's we promote that just to get all those talents to come up. It's great.
I remember in camp. I remember writing some of the songs for Kalawar, staying up late at night in Romimu and in Kalawar there. But then you put kids on to sing as a soloist or a choir.
They shine.
I remember the songs, and people have a chance to shine and to be special within the camp setting, to be a part of, not even like woodworking, which is something separate. This is a part of the camp program, and they're doing so much to pick them up. And there's, one of the things I'll tell you, one of the things I learned from the Rabbi Shaare book that I read is that there's so much you can be in Klal Yisrael, in so many places. There's talents people have. Of course, as a parent, our goal is to be mechanech our kids to both be machshav limanat Torah and do their utmost to grow in their limanat Torah and to become lamdanim. However, not every single person is going to become the Yeshiva. Like Chazal say, nichnas elef yatsa echad, right? So there's 999 people that need also to do something for Klal Yisrael, and they have the potential to do that. Sometimes you just got to find it, and camp has a tremendous opportunity for that, to find other places where people can shine and do, and which ends up becoming, once you build up that self-esteem, they can do so much for Klal Yisrael.
Rabbi Kuessous, I know you have to go a little bit, and we are pressed for time, but I want to ask you one last question, if I may. And this is always, we're going to end on a serious note. There's always this is always a concern. We spoke about this earlier with the children, younger children, older children, and why parents may be more hesitant to send kids to camp. Today there definitely is much more a discussion about safety in camp. And parents may be or may not be hesitant to send children to camp because of the safety issues. What can parents do? Meaning, obviously, if I send my kid to camp, my children go to Camp Achim, it's an unbelievable camp. Camp Agudah is an incredible camp. Camp Romimu, we've heard today, is a great camp. There's so many great camps out there. And obviously we trust they're run by mechanchim, people with experience, people that know what they're doing, people that are aware of all these worries. But for parents, what should parents, and from the camp perspective, what would you wish a parent told the kid before he came to camp? If you had an opportunity to tell a parent, before you send your kid to camp, tell them this, and this is how you should tell it to them. What would you say?
I would love to show you a document that we send to all the parents. I would say now it's about, I'm going to say 13, 14, 15 years, okay? First of all, to answer your question, the same way if chas v'shalom we needed a doctor or a specialist, you would go interview and you would sit down and talk to people before you choose someone to take care of your problem. Parents have to interview camps. You have to, the same way you choose a yeshiva, you call a camp and you ask all the hard questions. You just presented a beautiful display of concerns. Interview a camp. What do you do? If I have an allergy, how do you handle a medical emergency? How do you handle these things that you're being meramis to? If a camp doesn't have a real infrastructure of a system, that's a red flag. We've been sending out a document that was drafted through the Hadracha of Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky. And I'm going to say again, it may even be longer, 13, 14, 15 years, that tells a parent, Rachel Bitcha Haktana, these are the things that you have to tell your child. It even says there it's not Lashon Hara in the following areas, the halachas, the tayeles, and it itemizes very clearly. Not only that, once a child gets to camp, following the first 72 hours, An email will go to all the parents. Dear parents, we hope all is well. We've settled in. Please, when you speak to your child Erev Shabbos, don't be shy to ask your child the following questions. Is he happy? Are there any issues? Very, very real questions that you say, oh no, those are hard questions. But yes, because we want those answers. If chas v'sholom, a child is going to say, I'm upset, or this happened, or this, whatever it is, we want the feedback. So
what are some of the red
we can't
flags
be afraid. We need to tackle it head on, and that's the only way to do it.
What are some of the red flags that if a mother or father hears that they should be concerned about?
You know what? If a parent following that piece of paper that tells a child, a parent's telling a child the do's and don'ts, what shouldn't be happening, different things that should be taking place. If one of those things are violated or something bothering a child, he presents it to the parent tells the camp, we follow up and we make sure that there's no broken communication and that everything is kedas v'din.
So you definitely feel that it's a must that parents do have the conversation with the children about.
I think a parent, before you send a child to a camp, why assume it's the same camp from 30 years ago, 20 years ago? Call the camp director. Can you please tell me your setup? How do you handle this? What do you do if chas v'sholom is an emergency in the middle of the night? What happens if a child is sick on Shabbos? How do you handle an allergy?
But I'm saying more particularly with the child itself.
These are real items.
I'm saying not so much. Not so much. In addition to the conversation with the camp, also with the child itself, that a parent should absolutely talk to a child and say,
again,
these areas.
I don't think you want to do it on this setting, but yes, you have to tell the child the following things are allowed, not allowed. These are called red flags. These are things. Again, these are conversations. It's not just Klappe camp. Today, children go anywhere. These are things that have to be discussed.
Rabbi Kuessous, thank you so much for joining us. And you should have an amazing summer. And I think Shai is really hoping for an invitation for Shabbos. I think it'll be very nice to have like one of those, like the old time. We used to have a Camp an old timers game. We used to invite all the old timers to come back the night of visiting day to play a hockey game.
Avi and Shai,
I think Shai is definitely looking forward to an old timers Shabbos in Camp Romimu.
We'll give you a golf cart ride. We'll give you a great tour. And I'll show you Shai's bunkhouse that he swept out very, very well.
Amazing. Looking forward. Rabbi Kuessous, thank you very much. Have a great summer and a matzliach season. Uneventful. It should just be happy events. An uneventful season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a lot to unpack in that conversation with Rabbi Kuessous. And I think when we started the episode, in our introduction, we mentioned how we can go on for hours talking about camp. And after about 45 minutes or 50 minutes talking to Rabbi Kuessous, there's so much more that can be discussed. But at least we're able to get chaperein in these few minutes, not this few minutes, but that little while with him, some of the bigger questions and topics that, again, parents want to know about. I think our tzibur wants. So by me, this thing about staff it's one of my pet peeves. I always talk about it, maybe because I'm a camp guy, maybe because I was a head counselor in camp, and I saw firsthand Bachrim coming to camp, and I saw it in the girls' camp when I was in Ura for a couple of summers. They walk out, they're different Bachrim, L'taiv. They're going to clip that. They're different Bachrim. Yeah, they know L'taiv. And there's so much opportunity, and I was so I felt good to be validated by Rabbi Armo, by Rabbi Kuessous, to say, it is a lost opportunity.
And it's very true. You see, I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day about people doing things, just being sensitive to those around them. And if you're in your training, if you're in your formative years in high school, you have a month of your time, you're investing in caring about others, then guess what happens? When you get older, you're caring about your kids. Not only that, you're caring about things that happen in shul. You care about, just, again, picking up the farm and putting them away. Your mindset is to be a caring person, to be someone who's oisik b'tzarchei tzibor, and if you're not trained for that, and instead, what do? You go away to a camp, and everything is fed to you, and you never have that opportunity to have responsibility. So then it is a problem.
It's also dealing with crises, dealing with problems, dealing with challenges. A counselor, a bacher that's in 12th grade, first in base madrash, he goes to camp, and there's a boy in his bunk that's a difficult kid. It's his job. If he has a difficult sibling, it's not his job. he has a difficult classmate, it's not his job. This is your Christ now. This difficult kid is going to sit next to you or sit by your table every day in the lunchroom, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with this difficult child.
Yeah, and it's not only difficult, even if it's someone you're being sensitive, someone's homesick, a kid's
Right.
homesick. How do you be
All of it.
that parent? And there's so much.
There's so much there. It bothers me to know that we're losing this opportunity. Yeah, of course, the bacher that's going to sit and learn, and
Right.
it's not for me
But
to
he did also bring up this question of maturation, which is maybe, and you pushed back on it, but maybe the kids are not, in the world that we're living in, the people are not as mature, and therefore to expect such a thing is, I don't know if we're supposed to force it onto them. So I
He's
hear.
a bacher. These are 19-year-old kids. They're going to Israel to learn in yeshivas. They're mature. They're not 8-year-olds becoming counselors. These are guys that are in 12th grade, in first semester, second semester. I don't know what it's like so much in the girls' world. I believe you don't have Mesifta camps for girls.
That's true.
Most of them go to camp, or they go on road trips, which is also a question mark. They go on a road trip, so very nice. They went on a road trip. The parents would trust them to go on a road trip to Orlando, or to go on a road trip across the Midwest, or to go on a hiking trip with a couple of girls. So they're mature. They're going places. They're leaving their house. They're taking care of them. So it's such a lost opportunity, and I don't know what will come of this podcast, of people listening to it. Maybe someone
Should I give everyone your email address to
I
respond
don't know.
to?
I know that for sure the Mesifta camps are going to call me up with all sorts of tightness and upset. And yes, there's a place for everything. There's a place for Mesifta camp. But that there's this huge push of not going to camp. I wonder, are we losing out on a huge opportunity? Are we losing out?
And I think at the end of the day, every person has to know, every parent has to know their kids. But I want to tell you one thing I was very happy to hear from the conversation was the fact of how much time and effort goes in by the camp. He was talking about Romimu specifically, but I know I've dealt with Shimon Newmark in the Agudah boys and the Benos about preparation, being sensitive, being careful of the nuances of every kid, what they need, and making sure the kids are are having a safe time, the kids are having a healthy time. There's opportunities for kids to grow in their ruchnius, in their maturity, in their self-esteem. I know in Camp Agudah when we've been there, and from parents and even my own personal kids, I was able to call them.
We've been there like one time, like 3-4 years ago.
Okay, you want to invite. You want to invite.
We've been there one time.
I'm talking about
it was one time. It was one time.
But in working with the Rebbeim there and working with the counselors there, they are so. My son who went to Camp Agudah has a very close relationship with his counselor from there. Every Erev Shabbos they talk.
Really?
It's an amazing thing.
That's beautiful. By the way, that's the bacher that's able to be mashpia on another bacher, a younger kid, because he went to camp.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have had that in Mesifta camp.
I'm agreeing with them. But the
We're
fact
going to
is,
get killed by the Mesifta camps. It's not
they're going to say, you know why Agudah is upset? Because they don't have a Mesifta camp.
We have a Mesifta program.
Camp, right? They do.
We have a Mesifta program. We have a booming. You know how many friends of mine call me to get their kids into the Mesifta program? There's the right age. So 9th grade, and then 10th, 11th, and then it ends. And you go to camp to be a counselor. A 10th grader shouldn't be a staff member in camp. What's he going to do? So some camps have them be as waiters. Okay, there's a role for that. There is a role for that. Not a 10th grader can't be a counselor for 11-year-olds.
No, so
but the 11th graders, 12th graders, first year.
So that's
why are these guys not going to camp?
They have junior staff, yeah, 100%.
But, yeah.
When I was speaking about Romimu when I was there, I went there as a JC and a counselor. I've switched.
And look you today.
All
host of the Agudah Live.
Co-host.
This is
I can't take away from you. But look, this conversation was very important, and the truth is it opened up the doors for a lot more conversation that we have to have, and we should have. But no matter what, every person has to understand as a
safety
parent.
is always a hot conversation to have, because it's real, and it gets very complicated. How much you could say, how much you don't want to say. You saw we asked him that question. He didn't get into any of the details of what parents, and I tried to push him a little bit on that. Well, for example, and he didn't go there, which I do think that, I wish he would have gone there a little bit, and I think that parents do need to find out what.
So I think his camp, and I think it's really for
I
other
think
camps,
all the camps
send things out.
Every camp sends.
There is a coalition.
Camps.
There's a coalition called
Right.
OJC. I don't know.
There's
There's a coalition where they talk about it. They got guidance from Gedolim, and they send out a letter to the parents to discuss safety concerns that might come up. And it's important.
Parents got to have that conversation. Some parents, I do know that some parents just
are afraid of it.
They don't want. They're scared to deal with it. Because what if my kid doesn't understand? What if my kid doesn't do this? So that's, at some point, someone's got to have that conversation.
Yeah,
but at least the camps are giving the parents, which is a great thing, the blueprint of what the conversation should be, and it was so important what he said about camps, the parents being honest with the camps about their children.
You talked about your experience in camp.
And I was so happy to hear him say that, because the parents may think they're doing the children a favor. They're not. Like he said, the kid can come to camp not ready for camp, and not without his tools that he needs to come to camp, and it can backfire.
Right, you can't just...
It can backfire,
right.
Big time.
Two ways. You can't just assume that whatever he gained from the summer, from his past year, all the work that went into it, he's going to lose that by going backwards.
For
and
sure.
a parent can't just assume that they're going to put their kid on the bus and say goodbye for the next 8 weeks.
And now everything is good to go.
Your job as a mechanech, as a parent, applies even throughout the summer, being in touch with your kid and in touch with the camp.
There was a lot there, and I think we should have a follow-up episode about camp. Wherever it's going to be, whichever camp's going to invite us after this broad appeal for invitations. People are going to be wondering, what's with this guy Schnell? What he's so desperate to go back to camp?
The answer is yes.
No, not really. I don't know. My wife's not going to be so happy about that. No, we don't like going to camp.
They're not inviting you overnight. They're inviting you to come up and say hello.
For a day, huh?
He offered to ride,
a ride.
That's
a ride, a golf cart.
I
I got a golf cart ride in Romimu. Let's see what Camp Agudah has to offer, you know? But it was a lot there, and we should probably have a follow-up episode about this. And we're looking forward to future episodes on the issues of the day. And again, for everyone that's been listening, thank you. We appreciate it. And give us the feedback.
Info@agudahlive.com is the place where you get the feedback. Please send it to us. Share with us your thoughts, your ideas, your questions. Info@agudahlive.com or the website agudahlive.com, where we'll be posting this episode and other episodes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.